Well, good evening and welcome to the CreedCast. My name is Dave, and as always, we really appreciate you joining us. Unfortunately, not for a match review this week, though AFLW finals have begun. Your Port Adelaide side, of course, finished their season after last week, after finishing the season on quite a high, but we are done for the year. All AFL is done for the year for the Port Adelaide Football Club. It is all looking forward to 2026, but one more time looking back on 2025 for the AFLW side tonight with Jamie alongside me to just review everything that we saw with this AFLW side in 2025. An intriguing season, one that had plenty of frustrations, but ultimately a lot to look forward to in the future as well. So we'll look at it all tonight, looking through the results as well as kind of looking at the side that we fielded this year, as well as finishing off with the fun of announcing our voted player of the year from our podcasting this season of 2025. Jamie, good evening. I guess we'll start with just, we're a week and a half, almost 2 weeks since the season finished. I'll let you say hello as well. But then just how are we feeling at this point, a little bit removed from the season now?
Dave, hello.
It's good.
And hello, Creed fam.
There's good energy in the gym.
Yeah, can feel the love. Welcome back. And hello again to everyone. Hello to the Creed fam on various platforms, whatever your proclivities are, to throw an old term back in there. So what are my thoughts? How am I feeling? I'm still... Yeah, I'll just rip my shirt off. No one wants that. No, how am I feeling? I think I'm still conflicted. I've spent most of the year... Well, sorry, not most of the year. I spent half of the year frustrated, half of the year conflicted with the unlikelihood of playing finals to then come close. But I'm still conflicted because the Kangaroos beat Hawthorn by a plenty, kept them to 3 behinds, who we beat by several goals. So I still believe it's a race to second. But we'd all love to play finals because it's a nice feather in the cap. And in that regard, I'm disappointed. But as you alluded to off the top, there's a lot to be proud of and a lot to look forward to, particularly next season. And I watched Loz Arnell's press conference, and it sounds like she and the rest of the group are already looking forward to 2026 as well, particularly playing the Kangaroos again, which I share those sentiments as well. But season 2025, disappointing not to make finals, of course, but ultimately, in some regards and by some fans, labelled a step back. I think there's a bit of nuance to it, and I think there's some attributes to our season that would suggest that we actually took a bit of a step forward in some regards. So, conflicted, I guess, from that summation, it kind of touched on the negative and the positive. So, somewhere in between, as I usually am.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess I would probably share those sentiments generally. Like it was a season that we kind of started hoping with the. I think we both started the season with the knowledge and understanding that we were going to have a harder fixture this year, and so it worked out. I think one of the hardest fixtures in the league. We had the second one of the top 3 hardest fixtures in the league, possibly the second one. I'm actually just trying to think, like picture memory, a graphic I saw, but I'm pretty sure we were one of the hardest ones in the league for a side that was also one of the most inexperienced in the league as well. So when you kind of put those together, that lends itself to what we saw, which was a season of growth, some growing pains at times, which we'll go through when we get to some of these individual results. But one that ultimately I think that taught us a lot of lessons. And so we went into this year knowing that we'd probably have a little bit of a tougher fight to scrape into finals, but we were hoping that this side was good enough to do so. A few injuries early didn't help. And then we kind of just left it a little bit too late to really find some form that was beating some very good sides in the competition, which we'll get to. So, conflicted is probably the best way to put it, because I think our best footy could have challenged some of these sides in finals. I certainly think we could have been a decent shake of getting through the first week, the way we played towards the end. But
Hmm.
then, as you said, it's kind of like there is that little bit, and you've been on this all year. I think since very early, kind of putting up the point that it is an odd season when you feel like you're playing for second. You just like whichever team gets to the grand final will have the hope that they can maybe pull off the miraculous upset. But the by and large, it feels
For
like you
sure.
are, unless the Kangaroos have a shocking injury in one of their finals that maybe evens things out a little bit in the grand final. So yeah, it is a weird year when you don't really feel like you really were a shot anyway, particularly a team like ours that is still growing. But yeah, a lot of hope going
That'll
forward.
be the only thing, sorry to cut in, that'll be the only
Mhm.
thing that will cause me to find disappointment in this season will be if, yeah, the Kangaroos fall off a cliff, most likely through injury, and someone
Mhm.
does perform the miracle. Although Brisbane,
Kind of Bradbury it.
they're a tough outfit.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, I think Brisbane has probably the best claims to challenging the Kangaroos, and obviously Melbourne,
Mhm.
and we did it. Yeah, got the job done against them at home, which we'll obviously get to. But that'll be the only thing that I'll find major disappointment in is if for whatever reason, and I don't see it happening to be honest,
Mm.
if for whatever reason Kangaroos get knocked off somehow, or they do suffer injuries and that opens the door, um, depending on when those hypothetical injuries happen,
Yeah.
and they miss the grand final altogether, or they limp into the grand final,
Mhm.
but unlikely to happen. And yeah, I don't see my opinion changing, but that will be the only thing
Yeah. Yeah.
that would
No,
change my opinion.
absolutely. And I mean, they're already in a prelim, so they've not got far to go to get to that kind of mountaintop again for them.
Mm.
But this isn't a Kangaroos podcast, but it is very pertinent. We will talk about them very shortly, in that we did play them early in their run towards the top again this year. But before we get into that, I will do just a quick moment of housekeeping because I'm sure some people listening might be thinking there's lots of news on the men's side as far as fixtures and gather round and doggy. That has been kind of been coming
Teach me
out.
how to Dougie.
I'm not going to do that. It's it's such a like it threw me straight back to college when I was listening to that song today. Um, that there's a lot of news around that. We will record at some point next week about that. It is keeps bubbling up, but we want to give the women their space in this episode of the podcast and this week, and we wanted to get this review done. So keep an eye out. We'll do a bit of an all sorts episode at some point in the next week or so, just covering off all the news that has been kind of coming out in the last couple of weeks. We've got players back at training. We've got Jason Horne-Francis' foot again. We've got Dougie. We've got fixtures out. So there's lots to talk about, but we'll get to that next week. So I just wanted to mention that near the top here somewhere so that people listening will know that that is coming. We will talk about it, but we want to get this AFLW season review done because they certainly deserve to have their season looked back upon and kind of wrap it up in a neat little bow and yeah, celebrate the season that was. Ready to get into the first half of the fixtures, Jamie? Here, it's
Let's get it
interesting.
rolling. It'll be a nice, yeah, nice walk through memory lane.
Yes. It was an interesting little packet of fixtures, particularly in this first month or first 6 weeks. So we're going to go. I'm going to speed run through the first 6 weeks of fixtures, and then we'll kind of look back on the kind of storyline and kind of the narrative of that first 6 weeks here, of which it was an interesting first half of the season for your Port Adelaide Footy Club. We of course started the season at Alberton back in August. My wife was here; she was really excited to see the Port Adelaide side, as she hadn't seen them for a year or so in person. But it was a tough day at Alberton in that opening week against Fremantle. A slow first quarter in which Freo jumped out of the blocks and kicked the first 2 goals of the game in the first 5 to 6 minutes. While we did kick one back, we never really found our footing in the game. And while we made a little run towards the final result in the last quarter and maybe got within about 5 points, Fremantle ultimately kicked away and won by 22 points. To see our season opened in somewhat disappointing fashion with a loss at home, and something we spoke about in the preseason was trying to defend home field would be a really, really important factor in making those finals that we desired. So it was a bad start on that front. Freo are a decent side this year, but we still hoped for better out of the side, and a little bit of some of the structural issues that we started fixing quite quickly in a few weeks down the track were very, very prominent there. Of course, Emily Borg went down injured and wouldn't feature for the next few weeks, which was another particular little nugget to remember as we go through the results, because she was missed in that defensive structure. Not sure how much Emily Borg would have helped against North Melbourne in round 2, though. I'm sure she would have helped a little bit, but maybe a 72-point loss becomes 52. I don't know, but it was a 72-point loss to North Melbourne in round 2, 13-9-87 to 2-3-15. Gemma Houghton, the Jet 100-goaler Gemma Houghton, which I'm sure we'll talk about much more later on, but she was our lone goal scorer on the day with the 2 goals that we scored. A 72-point loss, and not much else to write home about. And in that one, it was North Melbourne just doing what they've done to plenty of sides this year. In round 3, it was Yulyardaporti Footy Club for about 22 hours, claiming the biggest score in AFLW history with a 16-12, 108 to 5-10 win over the Gold Coast. It was Indigenous round, of course, and the girls looked great in the Gavin Wanganeen designed Guernsey out there as they absolutely put the Gold Coast Suns to the sword. Matilda Scholes was at her absolute best. Gemma kicked 4, Scholes kicked 4, Tahu kicked 3. It was a big day for a lot of girls out there, and some scintillating footy that kind of hinted at the best that this Port Adelaide side, Yardaporti as they were on the week, had to offer. But still, there was some growing pains to come in future weeks, and right away as we went to West Coast, Woolwich Marooa in round 4, and saw one of the first examples of our side over the next few weeks getting a lead late-ish in the game, but giving it up in the fourth quarter. The fourth quarter yips that we had really popped up here and would continue through for a few weeks after this one. But 10-4, 64 to 7-3, 45. As we just couldn't run at home against a very, very good West Coast side. Round 5, and it was one of probably our best win in our history to that point, I think. Notwithstanding the semi-final last year, I think it was a very, very good victory to get a minor round victory over a side that's sitting in the top 4. This was, of course, the win against Melbourne. Melbourne came hard in the last quarter, kicking 5 goals, 11 for the game, but it wasn't enough to come over as 6 goals, 7-43 to their 5-11-41. Kate Hoare getting a questionable free kick in the last minutes to bring it really tight and make it a bit of a heart-stopper finish, but we held on and were able to get a famous 2-point victory against Melbourne. Again, a side that was in the top 4 at the time, their first loss for the season as well at that point, and a side that has remained in the top 4 throughout the year and is still playing finals. So a very, very good win for our girls there. Kind of learn a little bit about themselves and winning against some tough opposition. Melbourne were a little bit profligate in front of goal, but you've got to take your opportunities as they come, and we certainly did on the day. And round 6, a game that still burns me, against Geelong, a 5-point loss against Geelong, 6-9-45 for Geelong to our 6-4-40. Of course, a game very much remembered for being a tight game all the way through. It never got much out. We, of course, gave up the first 10 points in the game, 1 goal 4-0 after the first quarter, but we came back strong in the second quarter. Went in with a lead at halftime, but and were just down at three-quarter time, and ultimately lost by 5 points. It was tight all the way through, some blustery conditions, and ultimately most remembered for the umpiring mistake admitted by the AFL, in which Emily Borg was wrongly penalised for rushing through or behind. Geelong got the free kick that they, of course, converted, which ended up being the win. We're not going to make a big deal about it like another team in town would, because it ultimately could have cost us finals. But alas, it was still a frustrating one. Again, another example of just getting pipped at the post in the last quarter against a very good side. Georgia Prespakis was one that I kind of had not watched a whole lot as closely, of course, as I did in this game. I knew of her quality and seen bits of her, but this Geelong side had some good players, and they ultimately just were too good for us on the day. But again, an umpiring decision did spoil us in the end there as well. That is the first half of the season. We, of course, we're 2-4 at that point. Our wins against Gold Coast, that very, very big win. And of course, that very, very tight win against Melbourne. and some losses against some very, very close losses against some good sides. And of course, just one big loss against North Melbourne, which can't really say too much about because they've done that to a lot of good teams this year as well. But yeah, 2-4 at the break. It really wasn't what we were hoping for. And there was a few home losses in there, close home losses against Freo and Geelong. Of course, I said at the top that we said that defending home field was going to be really, really important this year. And we kind of turned at the halfway point, we hadn't done that, and it left us in a really precarious position.
Yeah, what a roller coaster of a first half of the season, particularly with all the expectation that the fans had going into it, obviously coming off the back of a preliminary finals berth last season. Yeah, being there at home, round one against Freo. I remember obviously Cockahoo, your lovely wife Andrea was there, like you mentioned. We went out for dinner afterwards, which was great as well.
Mhm.
Pirate Life, shout out to them. Great venue. Um,
Sunday roast was good.
Sunday roast, that's right. Yeah, Sunday roast. Yeah, and a dark beer, if I remember
Yeah,
correctly.
Sunday roast and a free
Um,
pint. Yeah, yeah, it's good.
yeah, great deal. Um, I guess that Fremantle game in a nutshell was that we looked flat-footed from the start, and I guess that kind of epitomizes particularly the first two rounds, like you mentioned. Like the Kangaroos loss seemed to be a fait accompli even heading into it. I
Hmm.
think we shot ourselves in the foot a lot in that game due to turnover. Kangaroos obviously being a much more senior side, much a very well drilled. I'm not going to say much more well drilled. That's a little bit subjective, and I have no insight into that. But they seem very well drilled. Obviously, their record speaks for itself, and particularly how that record extended after playing them in round two. Um, but then, yeah, you also get the positives in record score for 23 hours and the win against Melbourne. You said they're in the top four. They were actually second, to put
Hmm.
that even further into perspective at the time, and undefeated up until that point, like you mentioned. So we had a window into what we were capable of, but I guess with an immature, inexperienced side, consistency was the major factor at play, or the lack of consistency,
Hmm.
both within games and across those 6 weeks. Yeah, the theme that developed over the year and something that you commented on a lot was how competitive we were against a lot of the sides that we played against, particularly the top sides that we played against, having played seven of the top eight teams throughout the minor round. Competitive, but in certain games where we were in positions to win, we just couldn't keep that momentum rolling and solidify our position in those games. West Coast, the Fremantle game, yeah, it's while being flat-footed and a slow start, I thought we responded well in the second half. We should have put more on the board in the third quarter. We were
Hmm.
still pushing them in the fourth quarter, and again should have probably scored. And then I remember quite a controversial free kick that gave them a almost point blank range shot, which then just flipped the tilted the field, as you would say,
Yeah,
and in their favour. And I think they kicked two or three goals in a row to just put the lead beyond doubt.
yeah.
Things like that. West Coast, 5 minutes to go. I think it was even or a point in it. They kicked the last three goals within the last 5 minutes to make the score look flattering to them. Um, and the Geelong game does burn because, yeah, at the end of the day, we miss out on the top eight by percentage. And yeah, there was a lot of time left in that game, but Geelong didn't score again after that either.
Hmm.
There is validity in being annoyed and frustrated at how that finished. Um, and those things burn. It was a shit day for football against Geelong, very blustery and
Hmm.
overcast conditions, which kind of set the scene for what was about to unfold ultimately. But 2-4 definitely not where we wanted to be at the halfway point. That's for certain, and that's where the step back chat was kind of rearing its head.
Yeah, yeah. And at that point, I guess you could understand it. I think there was still we were talking about the fact we were close to a lot of these teams, We talked about West Coast. We were thinking they're a decent team, and they made finals. Of course, they bounced out in the first week, but they did make finals, and have got some very good young talent, some all star talent there. So Geelong again, a team that didn't make finals, but has been known to have some good talent and maybe kind of underachieving, but they're a side that can challenge you
Yeah.
with some of those kind of inside winners and in your Press Parkises and co. So there's some we've played some good sides and just fell short. I think what I would have, I mean, if we'd been 3-3 at the break and then everything had gone as it went the second half of the season as we got it, then we make finals. It is funny when you talk about, you were just talking about the goals late, like, giving up 3 to West Coast late, giving up the ones late to Freo, taking a small margin, whether it be, win or loss, to out to a 20 odd point margin. And you think about that percentage at the end of the year as well, the fact that we just missed on percentage.
Mm.
And you just go, God, if we could have just kept, maybe, looking back, I mean, particularly the Kangaroos game, we kind of kept on trying to play our game style as best as we could.
Yeah.
We could have done the Jose
It's something I
Mourinho.
was actually proud of.
Yeah, I think you might have talked about it at the time too. Of course, if you want to go back and listen to us talk about any particular result, you can go back. I don't know if you how many. You have to be a particular kind of sadist to go back and enjoy the the
Not only a
kangaroo.
footy nuffy, but a Creedcast nuffy as
Yeah,
well.
the Kangaroos one. But of course, go back, search through the feed if you want to hear us talk about any particular result in depth. But the Kangaroos one was one in which we just went like, we're not going to. We can lose this game any way we want. We might as well play our style. But then, this is the benefit of hindsight and all that stuff. It's just like, God, if we just made it
Mm.
trench warfare, we could have just maybe lost it by 20, 30 points, and we make finals. And it's a dumb way to think now, but it's just like, that's the percentage question is really like,
Mm.
but
When it comes down to percentages, yeah.
yeah. But what I will say, and I'm sure we'll talk about it more once we go through the second half of the season. The challenges and just sticking to our guns about who we want to be as a team is ultimately what you need to do if you want to get better. You can't chop and
Hmm.
change, and there's different sports that you can do things differently week to week for results based things, like whether it be some soccer teams have a style where they're just going to grind things down. Same with different sports, but I think when you're, as particularly as a young team as we are, sticking to our guns and just playing our style and trying to develop that this year is something that we'll talk about later on. But it has ultimately borne fruit. But halfway through the season, there was a bit of frustration about, and I was talking about it at the times, that we need to grow up because we were just falling apart in those last quarters, and it's just like there's a mental toughness thing to that. And again, hindsight 2020, we realized that we did grow from that, but at the time it was insanely frustrating, wasn't it? Because we were just watching results
Hmm.
slip through our fingers that were there for us, and that was something to be proud of, that we were in these games more and more than compared to particularly our first 2 seasons in the competition. But it was frustrating watching that West Coast one slip through our fingers, that we had a handle on the game, and it got away from us quick in those ones. Turnovers were an issue. I took one. There was just one stat I did grab. Like, I mean, in the Freo game in the first round, like we were outscored 4-4 to 1-4 by turnover, which whether that some contentious free kicks were a part of that as well. But
Mm.
turnover has been an issue for both the men's and women's side this year. It was more of an issue for the women's side in the first half of the year. There was issues with turnover, issues with just structure, and obviously but the big move that happened in that time was Indy Tahoe going forward as well.
And what a move that was. Little insight did we have, and I say we, I mean the fan base, the insight that you had from the preseason fixtures was her looking good and marking the ball well,
Mm-hmm.
competing well, looking good, and marking the ball well. All attributes that foreshadowed what was about to come when we inevitably. Well, I don't know if it was an inevitable change, but it was a brave magnet shift that put her up forward, and obviously the rest is history. But uh, again, if she was up forward for the first, for the first game, second, although Emily Borg obviously missing for most of that Fremantle game, and then the next game, we probably needed Indy Tahoe down back early doors anyway. So, um, But yeah, sign of things to come with Indy that you had a keen eye on. I don't even think that you expected her to do that or to the team to do make that switch. I mean, she'd been out of the game for so long that it was hard to know what her role was, where she
Mm.
would impact, how well she would impact. And I think we come away from the season pretty happy. But by the just focusing on the first half, by the midway point, we're glad we've actually got some firepower because early doors we were a bit suspicious of where our scores were going to come from, particularly when Gemma Houghton was being drawn up forward. Woodland obviously not in the forward line anymore, and our forward weapons in Teakle and Wendland obviously being on the sidelines at that point in time. So
Mm.
there was another point of contention, a point of concern. So then to move Indy into that forward third and shore up that part of our ground to add some balance and dynamism was a welcome change for sure.
Yeah, yeah. Is that it is still a fascinating aspect of the season that she didn't kick a goal in the first two rounds, but then by the midpoint of the season she has 11 goals. So she did once she found her groove and was put up forward, she started tacking the goals on pretty quick because that's essentially 11 goals in 4 games that she kicked to kind of finish out that first month of the first half of the season, and you just started seeing the genesis of what once Gemma started getting more trust in that she was legitimately the kind of the foil for her. You were starting to see kind of that partnership grow in these last few weeks of the first half of the season, and the spoils were starting to be found by both of them as the season wore on. There was still the aspects of just the overall flow of the game was still we were struggling at times, but you could just see the little morsels of some better times to come with Tahoe up forward and really opening up. And once Emily Borg gets back into the side as well, that helps structure up the defense. I think that was a really important thing that Emily Borg hasn't had many high disposal games, mark games, or anything like that, but she just takes away a threat down forward for the other sides and allows your Germax and Brooksby's. And I think that's another thing that is important about the first half of the season is that she did miss those 3 to 4 weeks. I can't remember how many she missed, but she did come back by the end of that
I actually
first.
think it was just the one in the
Was
end.
it?
It
I
felt
thought
like
she missed.
two because she went out early in the Frio game.
I thought she
But
missed
we were
more than that, to
expecting
be
her to
honest.
miss a lot
Yeah.
because we were thinking, like syndesmosis type areas.
Hmm.
I think ankle injury, yeah. But I think it was only the Kangaroos game
I
that she
genuinely
missed
thought she
in
missed
terms
more
of a
than
full
that, but
game.
yeah, yeah.
Mm.
Well, yeah, she missed a game against the Kangaroos, and look,
But
she.
the defense still did need to solidify itself after that first month.
Mhm.
I mean, yeah, not having Cuthbertson back yet at that point, we were still expecting her to come back at some stage.
Yeah, I think the team was working
Um,
towards it, wasn't it? Yeah.
yeah, and having the slow start, Borg going out for most of the Frio game and then the Kangaroos game. Um, Jermac obviously being given a freer role in the off season, but there
Hmm.
was still Syme, solidifying her kind of leadership qualities and her rebound game. There was still people trying to figure out what worked best as a unit, even when Borg did come back in round three.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, she was back for the Indigenous round game. It felt like so much longer. That's just how much I love her down back. The other one was like Ella Bogue developed through like she's been sorry, not Ella Heads. Ella Bogue had
Mm.
some wonderful moments this year as well, but Ella Heads in particular, she came in. I think she hit the ground running really well, but I think it was more through those first 6 weeks we were kind of like figuring out the best way to utilize her. She was doing her job wherever we put her, but there was like, sometimes it was deeper down back. And I think once we started giving her a bit more free, once we realized just how much of a weapon she was, and I think that first half of the season was discovering a little bit about what she was offering the team and could offer the team. She's been great all year, I think, but we were able to utilize her better as the season wore on, which we'll get to. But I think that was another part of the whole kind of mix of the first half of the season was we were just feeling like there was Indy Tahoe goes forward. We've got Ella Heads into the side, this incredibly talented young player, figuring out what she offers, and then just different aspects, and Piper Windows in and out of the side a little bit. Kirsty Lamb, we
Hmm.
just didn't quite coalesce in those first 6 weeks, which I think is part of the reason that we were a bit up and
Mm.
down within games, and of course for the first half of the season.
Players out, but then players coming in and out at the same time, all due to injury,
Mm,
which for a young side doesn't help at all. Yeah, Goody playing most of the year on a wing last year and then spending time in the middle this year is another change. Loz Arnell in her press conference mentioned the theme of versatility and the fact that all bar maybe one or two players played multiple roles this year. And um, in the AFLW, where you've got 16 on field and you've got smaller lists, uh, there's a bit more of or in her opinion, and I tend to agree, is a bit more of a focus on being able to be versatile, because as we saw, injuries might come, and you've only got 30 players on your list as opposed to the 44 odd that a men's program has. So you've got less to work with. So players need to be able to shift around a bit more. And I guess, yeah, there was a little bit of that early investment, not just for this year and how the year unfolded, in particularly in the second half of the season, but this is the investment that we're making for the years to come
mm.
as well. It just didn't look pretty for large patches of this first half in particular.
Yeah, yeah, that's absolutely it. It was just frustratingly inconsistent at times, but yeah, the seeds were being planted, and once again, I am, with the benefit of hindsight, quite glad we kind of stuck to just trying to figure out our own game rather than kind of succumbing to a kind of desperation
Mm.
in trying to play a
Batten down the
way.
hatches type
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah. Try to find a way that to make
Mm.
finals. We were going to make or break our season based on playing the style that we want to play, that Lauren Arnell wants her Port Adelaide side to play, and the style that these young players want to play. And we stuck to our guns in that aspect. And I guess we can move to the second half of the season, because then we can kind of talk about it in its totality once we get to the end of it. But it was an unfortunate start that kind of brought more frustration in the round 7 match. This was, of course, the debacle against St Kilda, a game in which we led 6-6-42 to 2-3-15 at three-quarter time, but St Kilda scored 6-2 without reply. A 38-point last quarter led them to an 8-5-53 to our still 6-6-42 at the end of the game. The largest comeback in AFLW history, of course, eclipsing our comeback against Hawthorn in the semi-final last year. Really just a tale of a game that was a mad 10 minutes in which Jesse Wardlaw just went Super Saiyan mode and just absolutely took over the game. And we kind of just, again, fell to bits for a few minutes, and that's all it takes with a side like ours, and with a side like St Kilda that just absolutely just threw the kitchen sink at the result and got what they wanted. So a game that at the time was insanely frustrating, and really kind of in the wake of the frustrating first half of the season, kind of that frustration was building. But I ultimately think it also served as a turnaround point, because as we headed to round 8, we had a home game against the Bulldogs in round 8 at Alberton. A game that, it's funny, Jamie, I was thinking about this one. I've been thinking about this one at times, and I was like, oh, it was a nice, comfortable win. But it was a game that we actually had to kind of come back into a couple of times, with the Bulldogs getting out to an 8-point lead at quarter time, a 7-point lead at halftime, and then they kicked the first goal of the third quarter pretty quickly to skip out to a 13-point lead. And it just felt like, even though we actually were the better side for many parts of the game, they just kept on getting one over the back on us. And it felt like one of those games that we were going to put so much effort into it, and the Bulldogs were just going to keep getting one out the back and keep us at arm's length. But then, no, it was the Indy Tahoe show from that point on. Goals, and Port Adelaide kicked 4 of the next, actually 6 of the next 7 goals in the game to really win the game, 8-6-54 to 5-5-35. Again, a game that felt much more comfortable in my memory bank than when I looked back at the score worm and how the game kind of played out. So, but it was a great win that immediately kind of led us to believe that maybe they have started to finally learn some lessons, because we did come back, have a stronger second half, and particularly put the game away in the fourth quarter, having only been ahead by a point at three-quarter time. We win by 19 points in the end with a 4-goal final quarter, which was really impressive. The next game, unfortunately, we go up to Brisbane, and much like our men's side this year, it felt like a result that would put the finals question a little bit too far out of reach before the magical last few rounds occurred. But we put up a decent effort up in Brisbane. At one point in the third quarter, still only been down by a goal. But ultimately, Brisbane were starting to find their groove within the season, and it's just a far better, just a well-structured side, know what their game plan is and play it to aplomb, and won 9-8-62 to our 4-9-33. A game, of course, remembered for Piper Window, who's just had a luckless game, really. Sorry, I'm Port Adelaide. No, sorry, I'm actually reading. I'm reading my wrong notes. Piper Window. Sorry, she had a luckless season because was replaced late in the side against the Bulldogs by Kirsty Lamb because she had an ankle flare up. She comes back into the side for the Brisbane game, and then gets essentially her cheekbone caved in, and was in very, very distressing scenes. She's of course fine, but she had a concussion, and that was the end of her season. But yeah, I'm like conflating my notes. Sorry to the listener there, as I stumbled for a moment, but I was conflating my notes because I was looking at my Western Bulldogs notes about Piper Window that were right above my Western Bulldogs, my Brisbane notes about Piper Window. That's how much of a luckless season she's had. That was like 2 weeks in a row where she's like, I'm out of the side late, and I'm back in the side, and then my cheekbone gets broken, basically. So yeah, no, she had of course.
And you can't replace me this time, because it happened in game.
But yeah, so Piper Window went out, and it kind of felt like just at that point, it's like, these injuries keep mounting. Window's probably out for the year. We've just lost to Brisbane. We've got 3 games to go, 3 very tough games. This season might just peter out a little bit, but hopefully we can get something out of the next 3 weeks. And of course, we did go on a magical little run here for the last 3 weeks, starting with Hawthorn at Alberton, and incredible scenes in which, again, a tight first half, but one that I think were the better side for large portions of it. Matilda Scholes, of course, dominating. She didn't have Lucy Wales to contend with, but it didn't really matter. I think she would have done the job either way. And our Port side just really, really flipped the script on a lot of things that we'd been seeing earlier in the year. Again, the learnings were starting to be seen. And a game that you and I reviewed and said that might be our best win in the AFLW yet, just with how impressive it was with our statistical dominance. And ultimately, that statistical dominance led to the scoreboard dominance, 15-4, 94 to 8-11-59. Absolutely demolishing the Hawks on our home deck, which was wonderful to see. But it was going to be bettered by an even more impressive result. Of course, getting our first showdown win in the AFLW, dominating the Crows at Norwood. There's so much to love about that. Port Adelaide winning at the parade again, dominating at the parade, beating the Crows, making them look like absolute shit on their home deck. It was only a kind of last gasp effort by the Crows in the last quarter that brought it within respectable score range for them. But really, those football knowers know that Port Adelaide dominated that game, winning 7-10, 52 to 6-9, 45, including there was at one point a 15 inside 50s to 0 period of play at the start of the third quarter. We just absolutely made the Crows our little pet, walking them around the parade on their shitty little fucking straight line boundaries. So yeah, that was a wonderful night. Over 5,000 people at Norwood Oval getting to watch the Port Adelaide become Kings of Adelaide in the AFLW. Of course, our season finished round 12 against the GWS Giants up in Sydney, 11-15-81 to 3-6-24. A game that saw us GWS skip out to a 2-goal lead, but then we just dominated the game the rest of the way. Not much more to be written home about regarding the result. We dominated and finished the season in great form. But of course, it was remembered with Gemma Houghton becoming the first in AFLW history to kick 100 goals in their career. And incredible scenes after the siren. We've talked about it at length, but we'll talk about it a little bit more in a moment. But of course, it was added to by Indy Tahoe, finishing off her AFLW League leading goal kicking season, finishing on 25. Gemma finishing on 23, 1 and 2 in the leading goal kicking tally, which was a wonderful kind of individual accolade that kind of highlights how we played this year as well. Sticking to our guns, it meant that our guns up forward could kick plenty of goals. We were able to score plenty and ultimately have a very, very entertaining finish to our year, and one that kind of just whets the appetite for the journey going forward into 2026 with this side. I'm out of breath. I forgot to take a breath
So
in there, Jamie. Take over for me.
I'm red in the face. No, and certainly, yeah, looking forward to many years ahead off the back of that last game in particular. But yeah, what an interesting second half of the season. Obviously, starting this 6 game stretch was that abysmal finish against St Kilda,
Mhm.
and yeah, obviously the Sunday before my son was born, so happily
That's
didn't review it with you.
yeah.
But I was absolutely seething. Having a bad day. I was in a pretty bad mood, and I was watching it in hopes that the girls would lift my spirits. And look, for the most part, we looked like the better side. I think
Hmm.
we'd got out to 4+ goal leads a couple of times in the game, and it just needed a bit of a straight steer to the end. Keep the sails up. Don't do anything silly, but we've really got inside our own heads, and St Kilda came home with a wet sail to keep on the nautical theme. Jesse Wardlaw caught fire, like you said. Some of their better players just started clicking, and we just turned to water. I touched on a smothering stat that I noticed from the game because we were just very predictable and one-dimensional with how we were going about it. It was still even at this point in the season where we were just like, what are we doing?
Hmm.
Our skills are terrible. What's the game plan? Like, well, surely we have one, but um, yeah, the last quarter seriously, seriously put a bit of taste in a lot of people's mouths, and I think leading up to it, Uh, we were talking about the fact that St Kilda have been a fairly decent opponent for us, fairly fruitful opponent in terms of wins for us. I think we were 2-1 coming into it against them, and I think that one loss was a pretty close one going back a few years. And it was where our season kind of really came to prominence last year, and it was partway through our run to the finals last year, but it was a real test, and we beat them at home last year, and it got the ball further along the track. So after that Geelong game, where we were licking our wounds from a poor umpiring decision and whatnot, we were hoping for the turnaround that we thought was just about to come. But then in the end of that game, we're left thinking, well, where is the next win actually going to come from? We had Bulldogs who were in a similar spot on the ladder to us, as far as I believe. And look, they
Hmm.
finished 12th in the end. We finished 10th. Um, but then after that Bulldogs game, we're looking at, yeah, Lions, Hawks, showdown. And we were, hoping for the GWS game to come around sooner than what it was, being the last round of the season. Kind of get the click remote out and just click to the last round and get it all over and done with, because we certainly didn't have any hope of making finals at the conclusion of the St Kilda match. But like you said, we came into the Bulldogs game. It was at home. It was quite a warm night, as far as I believe.
Hmm.
Um, After we'd got through a bit of that cold weather at the end of winter and whatnot. And we did. It was a tough slog. I remember some text messages that we were sending to each other while I was on paternity leave, and just really bitter, particularly that first half, and just again question marks everywhere. What are we doing? Certain elements of the game were microcosms of the season as a whole. And in my opinion, we looked spooked that last quarter against St Kilda. It was like there was a little demon sitting in our minds, and we were at half rap power. But then, come the second half, the midfield got to work. Ash Woodland started to flex her muscle a bit more. Things started to click. Our pressure game just switched,
Hmm.
flipped on a dime. And that's when we really started to. We harkened back to, because that was a feature of the Melbourne game. And you mentioned their profligacy in front of goal, that Melbourne game. But I think we were commenting on the fact that they were under a lot of pressure when they were taking shots at goal or taking shots from low percentage positions on the ground. And that probably flatters them in terms of how many scoring shots they had. But there was more nuance to it. And we hadn't really seen that. It was a slog against Geelong and then St Kilda, while it was a good game, like I said, 4 goals at a couple of stages throughout that game. That pressure game kind of eluded us for a couple of weeks there. And in the second half against the Bulldogs, it came back and it made a noticeable difference on the contest and our fortunes for the rest of that game.
You want to know the number?
And the pressure number,
Yeah, I've got it in front of me actually. I'm
yeah.
just having to note it. Just to emphasize your point, the 6 goal streak in the second half helped the Power get over the line as they recorded a pressure rating of 220 in this period. So yeah, 220 for the second half of
Mm,
the Bulldogs game. So that
that's
just
bonkers.
adds to your
Mm.
point. That's where we found it again.
Yeah, it was like they went into the rooms at halftime and someone, leadership group, coach, Loz Arnell, or it was a kind of intrinsic reflection. I don't know, but whether it was someone on there, a little, angel on the shoulder was saying, like, this is what you need to get back to, and that is
Mm.
what's going to get you back into the game and back into the season.
DNA,
I guess you
DNA.
could say. Yeah, exactly. A word, yeah, acronym that we brought up constantly.
Mhm.
For what was this in? Yeah, up to round 8. Uh, and that's where it turned. We head into Brisbane. We got to Springfield. Oh no, they're in Ipswich. Sorry, and while hopeful that we could provide a good contest, that was another week of hot football for us up
Mhm.
in Brisbane. And like you mentioned, with Piper Window going out of the game, within the game, it meant that we were a rotation down. Yeah, while the score looks flattering to Brisbane, the contest was much closer than that for a longer period of time.
Mhm.
And we did still have questions. Obviously disappointed to come off the back of a good win against the Bulldogs. And then, you know, not that we had momentum, but there were moments in the game where, again, our skills left a lot to be desired against
Mhm.
Brisbane. And yes, the score flatters them, but we didn't do ourselves a lot of favors at stages. Being a rotation down, being a very hot day in the middle of the day, and yeah, we're left to lick our wounds. So again, we're left thinking like, oh, well, here we go again, coming up against Hawthorn, who now had their turn at sitting at second on the ladder. And what was about to unfold, nobody expected. And it was such a
Mhm.
welcome change of fortunes. And the way that we played in unison, it was one of the best team performances that I can remember. And I remember you kicking off the review and us discussing it being one of our better wins, more complete victories in the AFLW just by how we performed. There was score, there was pressure, there was disposal chains, there was tackling, there was um, front half defense, which we didn't really give ourselves a very good chance at all in the season up till then at performing. But
Mhm.
it was something we really took away from the opposition and franked in our own regard by putting the score on the board as a result. And then we kind of go, well, hey, look, couple of games left. Let's see what we can do. And obviously, the big carrot was having our first AFLW showdown victory, and that was that a famous victory, of course, in our own backyard. We'll remember it forever now. And just as a sidebar, I guess this is part of the joy of the journey with the AFLW. There's not very often that you can be part of the first of things in sport.
Mhm.
And the AFLW provides that for not only our fans, but fans of all the other clubs over the last 10 years. And, everyone still talks about the first men's showdown and whatnot. And, now that we've got ours in the women's regard, and like you mentioned, we dominated them. The score flatters them to no end due to our own. Well, profligacy doesn't even come to it because it was mostly inside 50 dominance that we just didn't take advantage of. And then there was the shots on goal that did shave left or right of the goals and tease at pushing that margin out further that didn't eventuate. And they came home with a wet sail themselves. They had no choice, obviously, at their quote unquote home. their renter home, I guess you could say.
Mm.
But a famous win nonetheless, and a score that did flatter the Crows. We did dominate that game, um, just to come into the GWS, and we had the criteria list, and the most unlikeliest of outcomes was there for the taking. But then another layer below that was the most unlikeliest portion of that actually happened in where Essendon beat Sydney, and we just needed to pile on a lot more than what we ended up doing. But it was a fantastic victory nonetheless. A scoreline that you would, I mean, coming into the season, that you would probably assume halfway through the season you'd assume, and without the extra will we make finals connotation to it, it's a 10 goal win, and you take that every day of the week against GWS, especially with the added bonus of Tahoe establishing or you know firming up her dominance in terms of goals kicked for the year in the competition, and then Gemma Houghton apparently teasing us that she was going to kick 100 goals just to do it after the siren,
Mhm.
which, again, talking about firsts, it's something that Port Adelaide can be proud of, the fan base can be proud of, but another first that we can look back on in years to come and go, I was watching that game, I was part of the, you know, I've been arrested on since kind of thing, because I imagine in 5 to 10 years they'll be, the supporter base will be fucking twice as big as it is right now, and there'll be a lot of people jumping on the bandwagon because it will be a much healthier state. Um, a chat for another time, of course, but
Mm.
these are just the things that we appreciate being on the journey and being on the journey from the start.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you and I will always remember being, I mean, sitting at home and watching Gemma kick our first AFLW goal at West Coast in that opener back in 2022.
Mm.
We were, of course, both at Alberton watching her kick our first goal at Alberton for AFLW in an AFLW game. And now we get to witness her, and obviously the goal late against GWS last year that clinched a home final for us, and then this year she kicks goal number 100 after the siren. Gemma Houghton is a lady that has a unique relationship with timing, and in the fact that she is just incredible at making the most out of moments, and at just the exact right time that makes them the most dramatic in the most wholesome way. Though they're always wholesome moments as well, and her connection to the club, and I think it's such a good moment to finish the season on, like a season that hasn't gone exactly as we would have hoped, as far as
Hmm.
making finals. But the fact is, our very last moment of football play this year was watching Gemma Houghton kick goal number 100 and watch her teammates just in your background. For those if watching on YouTube, you'll see it. For those listening, Jamie's background tonight is, of course, I'm going to see players
The
and
pylon.
yeah, Gemma's hitting the ground, looking both happy and possibly fearing for a safety as there's like Matilda Scholes is like top of the pile, just like clambering in. But that's just wonderful that's kind of the finish of the season. That's kind of the vibe of how this team finished the year was just all all in on themselves, on who they are as a group, and I think that's what kind of the last 3 weeks in particular epitomized for me was this, that they locked in to who they are, discovered so much more about who they are as a team this year. Still a lot of growing to do, of course, but they discovered so much about themselves. And in that last moment, as they're piling on Gemma Houghton, they really realize that there's a burgeoning specialness about this group that even though they didn't make finals this year, they just treated us to some incredible wins. That first showdown win will forever be etched in memory for how it was won. It was won playing. We won against one of the best sides of the AFLW's early history in the Crows, who maybe they're a fading power, which is lots of fun for me personally. But they still have been a power, and we went to their home deck and beat them playing our style and absolutely dominated them for large parts. And I think that's what's most why I kind of teased it in that first half, that when we were talking about it, that again, it's hindsight that we see this now, but we're sticking to our guns and working through some of those growing
Mm.
pains in that first 6 weeks. I think we talked about this last week, maybe in reviewing the GWS game or even reviewing some of the other ones, but it's pertinent to talk about now, that we don't get these last few wins and get close to finals if we don't work through some of the shit in those first 6 weeks. So it's like you can kind of grumble about not getting the wins then, but we learnt stuff in those first few weeks that made us so much better in those last few weeks.
Yeah, and to play devil's advocate, like we won't know that either, but
Mm,
it is through adversity that you do usually learn a lot about yourself on a personal level or in a team environment. It is
hmm.
where you get the most learnings through some of those losses,
It's all about
particularly as
DNA
a
and
young
learnings.
side. DNA and learnings. Yeah, that's absolutely correct. So yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we'll never know either way, and
Mm,
we're all everything is all in hindsight. But I think there would be a lot of people in that camp to say that without that adversity and some of those poorer losses, that perhaps it doesn't firm our focus or firm us up for some of those wins at the back end of the year. Um, Again, in a season where perhaps in the rooms they're going, no one's winning the premiership against North Melbourne. Like, let's see how we can refine our own games so that
mm,
we can give ourselves the best chance in 2026, for example. Not easy to hear that. If that's the case, I'm obviously um, playing in hypotheticals, but it goes along with what you said. Perhaps there is that vibe of no, we're going to stick to our guns because this is the investment that we're making now that's going to pay dividends in years to come, and hopefully set up quite a period of success. Being such a talented side and being such a young side, being the youngest side, if what Lauren Arnell says is true, which I can only take her on face value from her press conference, it's a very, very exciting prospect to have heading into the years ahead. And perhaps when we do win our first AFLW premiership, hopefully next year, but hopefully in the near future, we look back on this year and obviously 2024 being our first finals berth year and going like that. That's when that framework was laid, and that's where it all started. Um, those losses hurt. They hurt in the
mm.
moment. They're not great to look back on, particularly the way that the St Kilda one unfolded.
Yeah.
But yeah, if we're sitting here in 5 years' time and we've won a premiership or a couple, perhaps it's all worth it in the end. And
Mm.
hopefully at that point in time, we're playing 17 rounds.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, that'll be the
Because again, sorry, just to finish off that point,
ultimate.
a lot of this work has happened against the better sides of the time as well. And while we didn't pick up wins against all of them, clearly, we've had to do it the hard way this year in particular. We've had to learn these lessons against some very, very valuable opponents or noteworthy opponents. And yeah, we had a couple of fill your boots games, but we're left without having played, three of the bottom five, where, if we're playing a full season of AFLW, um, that could be the difference that some other clubs who did make finals get.
Yeah, yeah.
That's what they're afforded.
In particular, when you have to play so many of those tough ones up front, then yeah. If you had a soft run home, maybe after playing the hard ones, then you're either learnt enough about yourself and you get those wins. And yeah,
Mm.
because if we'd been
Establish
finishing,
your dominance a little bit.
yeah, if we'd been finishing the season against those sides that we hadn't played yet, we'd be in a really really good position. I think you kind of did a little,
Percentage would look good.
yeah. I think when we started the GWS review last week, you said, "Oh yeah, no, I'm really looking." They kind of facetiously said, "I'm really looking forward to the next few weeks when we get to play some of these sides." And it was a great way to look at it. That like we're just finding our form,
Yeah.
and yeah, it's an interesting one. Like just thinking about the kind of like, do you need to have the pain to get the gain, so to speak, and because it is, I do think we learned a lot about ourselves. I still think there's certain parts of the season that are just like the St Kilda loss just shouldn't happen. Like you're dropping a 27-point lead that you had at
Yeah.
three-quarter time. It is still inexcusable. Like in isolation, that just shouldn't happen. But then I at least look like I can own when things like that happen. You should never have to learn from something like that because it just shouldn't happen. But when they do happen, all you can do is respond. Like the event has happened, the shitty game has happened, the result that never should have happened. All I look to from that point on is how you respond, and you're either going to fall apart and have a get the season goes worse. And then, as you mentioned when talking about the Western Bulldogs one, we were like in that first half, we are like, well, this isn't looking good. Like we're not responding well, but they do finally find a response in that second half against the Dogs, and from then on, it felt like we saw legitimate response. So it's not excusing the St Kilda debacle, but it's more at that point, all you can do is respond. And I think we just saw the response in the best possible way from about, halfway through the next game through the rest of the season. Because I think when we reviewed the Brisbane game, while the result wasn't great, we kind of lauded the endeavour that the side showed within that game from go to woe, through the adversity of losing window within that game. We got out to an early lead, kind of held with them for a while, and then Brisbane kicked away. So even in that game, but basically from the St Kilda game on, we go 4-1. So against good sides that are playing finals or were thereabouts, Western Bulldogs were thereabouts and in contention at that point for sure. And then, Brisbane, Hawthorn, Adelaide, all sides playing finals still. So, we tested our mettle and came through with some very, very good results from that point on. So I think that's part of what I'm so proud of in the end part of the season is that the maturity of such a young side, and because I think even Kate McCarthy, when she did her rankings of the sides that have finished the season now, she gave us a B+ and basically said, this is the most inexperienced side in the comp and how they finished the season, like, B+, rating for the year, which I think is a very fair way of looking at it. I think just the response, the maturity for a side that is seen to be so inexperienced by the wider AFL world, for them to have the maturity to respond that way is a very, very good sign going forward. But particularly just for their accolades for this year, a very young side showed a lot of maturity late on in this season.
Yeah, I agree. And it goes in with my comments about looking forward to what we can do. Now that these girls can, they've put a good block of games in together, and playing more and more games together is only going to be more fruitful for the Port Adelaide Football Club.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely. Do you have any other thoughts on the season itself, or did you want to get to looking just to have a quick look at the lines as they were for the year, and we can maybe talk a little bit more about the individuals within that before we get to our Player of the Year votes?
No, nothing more from me. Just, I guess, to reiterate a point that I made after the GWS game. I think the closer, and I touched on it obviously in my wrap up there, the quicker that we can get to a full season, playing everyone once, the better. Because while I feel conflicted about missing finals, I still believe that we are one of the better sides. We finished the season as one of the better sides in the competition, and unfortunately don't get to play finals just due to the machinations of how it looks. So, um, yeah, a little bit of lament, but a bit of a hope as well for the AFLW competition moving forward. But yeah, looking forward to looking at some of these players in the lines as well and commenting on their seasons.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, let's have a look at the Lions and just how they performed this year. And I guess we can start, I think, probably the starting point is the defense. We can finish, not to be down on the defense at all, finishing with the forwards would be a fun line. The defense has been quite good as the season wore on, though. So how did you feel? Like defense, of course, we can look at it as a side that generally lined up with Amelie Borg for more of the season than I remembered earlier in this episode. Of course, Molly Brooksby, Tegan Jermack, Sachi Syme, and Ebony O'Day increasingly kind of effective as the season wore on as well. Of course, the likes of Ella Heads dropped back there and a few others, Indy Tahoe starting down there. But by and large, though, that was kind of our starting defense for much of the year. How did you feel about their performance this year? For me, I think it was one in which, the way we play can leave them exposed at times. But when we're playing our best, it's of course their job's a lot easier. But a similar way to sometimes our men's game has been over the past few years. It's just there's a swashbuckling style that we want to play with that can leave them exposed on the turnover. But Yeah, how did you feel about them? I felt okay about them by the end of the year. But yeah, they're. I think what's great about them is they're an incredibly young group, and they're playing quite well together considering their age.
Yeah, that's a good point. And obviously, yeah, every third is young. We're the youngest team, so
Mm,
it's a connotation to all thirds. But yeah, it's one portion of the ground that didn't have that senior figure to kind of work around, whereas the other thirds did have a bit of seniority, particularly the forward line, and then the middle, with Kirsty Lamb at stages throughout the season,
mm,
and Ash Woodland kind of being that mid-range in age. Leadership in experience in the caper, not in the position though, but we'll obviously get to those lines. But yeah, the defense being inexperienced all around and being young all around, I thought they did really well as the season progressed to gel as a unit. Obviously, they were hoping to have Janelle Cuthbertson come
mm,
back in to kind of offer that senior leadership and maybe be the North Star a little bit. But when that reality didn't come to fruition, they just had to keep on keeping on. And I guess we did see further emergence of particular players. You know, Tegan Jermack, after coming in as an injury replacement in 2024, showed glimpses of what she was capable of in 2024. But I thought extended upon that perfectly. It looked like she had a bit more of a defined role in taking the game on.
mm,
And as well as that, I thought she had certain jobs throughout the year where she was accountable one on one. I think she's one of our taller defenders, in terms of our consistent players in that defensive third. So her and Borg were generally the ones on the taller forwards. Um, Borg on Borg, and like you said earlier, she did the job more often than not, taking the best forward of the opposition. Um, and I thought, I'm not sure if she necessarily grew. Um, Definitely not exponentially. Maybe more solidified where she's at. Maybe a bit of a plateau, but I don't want that to necessarily have a negative connotation. The good thing is she didn't go back. She got more games under her belt. She is now going to be the central figure to our defensive line, particularly being co-vice captain as well.
mm.
Um, but I would like her to get more disposals. This is obviously looking forward, but in terms of the season that was, you could trust her to do a job. Unfortunately, very unlucky with several umpiring calls. Not only that Geelong one, there was a couple others that we commented on throughout the season. That I don't know what it is about her, but umpires just want to ping her for deliberate out of bounds or deliberate rush behind. So
Yeah, there's a
Molly
few.
Brooksby got a bit of yeah, sorry,
I was just
yeah.
going to say there's a few memories in my head of just Emily Borg just looking bewildered at an umpire, which is with arms
Yeah,
out, like it's just
absolutely.
like, and I'm like, I'm with you, Emily. Like, I don't know what the fuck they saw there either. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah, for sure, for sure. And credit to the ladies, they don't, you know, throw the toys out of the cot a lot like the men do.
yeah.
So
They
much more
just look
mature in
puzzled.
that regard. Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Unfortunately, yeah, for her in those cases. But I was going to say Molly Brooksby as well. We saw a bit of we saw her evolve a little bit. She got pushed up the ground at stages throughout the year, which
Mm,
again I like because I think she was pigeonholed as a bit of a kick-in player because she does have a good kick on her and a fairly accurate kick on her. But yeah, if you've got talent by way of foot in a team that doesn't have very effective disposal, then it is worth getting her out of the goal square in terms of kick in and letting her kind of roam up the field to connect the dots a little bit, which I liked.
mm,
In her second season, we're talking about as well. Sachi Saim, I thought, developed more as a leader. She was taking the game on more, just hard nosed. She had a balance of aggression, in terms of at the contest, but then also breaking away from the contest. She was always looking to attack corridor, for example, always looking to take it away from the opposition and move the ball forward. There were times, particularly early in the season, where it kind of she shot herself in the foot with some of the decision making. Well, it wasn't that it was execution is what I'm trying to say. The decisions were right. It was just the execution that let her down at stages. And I thought as the season wore on, the execution of those similar decisions were coming off much better.
Hmm. You know, I absolutely agree. I'd noticed like Sachi's disposal efficiency generally kind of got better as the year wore on, and she continued to get the intercept possessions and do her job, do the things that she was doing well, and she just kind of added to her game and kind of refined her game as the season wore on, and as we got better as a side, she certainly got better as well. And I think sometimes early in, I think particularly in that the Frio game, which kind of
Mm.
generated the start of the yeah such out in the outer from
Yeah,
yourself in
yeah,
particular. Sometimes it just felt like her teammates weren't going well enough with her to get to the drop of the ball. Like, you know, sometimes her disposal was a little bit off as well, but I think in particular in that game, it just felt like she was the only one like that had the speed of the game right. So, like it didn't help
or
her
that
out there
actually
either.
wanted to attack the game as
Mm,
well.
yeah.
We're a bit timid. Again, we're on our heels, like I mentioned, started a bit flat-footed, but yeah, she was like a rock, she was like a brick wall
Mm,
back there in that game in particular, and seemed like one of the only few that wanted to actually take the game on or take some risks.
yeah. The only other one that like Ebony O'Day, I think had a slow start to the year, but grew into it and kind of started doing
Yeah,
Ebony O'Day things, some heavy tackles. You know, some players that took a long
wrecking
time.
ball.
Yeah, it took a long time to get up after tackles, and particularly loved her in the showdown, just really getting into the kind of the scuffle stuff. She was really involved in that, and she's such a
That's why we love her.
yeah. She's I think she had a great finish to the year. I think the defense is probably, and this isn't anything preview looking forward, but it's one of those areas that like you kind of wonder where the depth comes from going forward. But certainly as far as a starting line, I think what they get
Particularly with sorry, yeah, particularly
yeah.
with Alyssa Brooke being delisted.
Exactly. I kind of wonder what we're doing as far as there must be maybe some moves on the horizon, things that we're not aware of. But I'm sure we'll talk about that.
Mm,
Well, I've got obviously probably talk about it when maybe some list changes, draft and trades and such happen with the AFLW once their season finishes. But that's a little ways down the track and not much pertinent to the purpose of reviewing. But I kind of like the lineup we've got. As could maybe use a little bit more height down there at times, and so but.
hmm
Some of the players we've got some very good players down there, and predominantly an incredibly young group that's only got a lot of growth to come. So yeah, I really loved. I think Jermac had an incredible year considering she's kind of built on what she did
hmm
last year. Like you said, the glimpses. Brooksby let her expand her game, and she's just grown by leaps and bounds again this year, I think, and got stronger as the season wore on. And so yeah, there's lots to love about that line, and again, I think they sometimes got burnt by sometimes when they looked exposed, it was more about what we were doing up the field than anything they were doing, and
Yeah.
often actually, like it was Amelie in particular, sometimes chased back and did a one-on-one defensive effort as the ball had gone over the top incredibly well at times, and never would count as a disposal. Like often she just harry and chase and tackle and just bat the ball around as the other opposing players trying to. So I don't know if it ever counted as a disposal. So if you like just touches on a ball, like Emily's numbers are going to look a lot better than
hmm
just disposals. Like she just often ends up in those situations where she's not getting disposals. She's just harassing an opposition player in a one-on-one. So, um, yeah, there's some really good signs there from such a young group, which I'm really impressed with. Um, the centre line is a really kind of the midfield is a really intriguing spot. Obviously, some great performances this year, and I think grew into the year incredibly well, particularly the move of Ash Woodland to the middle, of course. Ella Heads is one you can talk about in the defensive sense, but I think she was used more up the field as the season wore on, and kind of her impact. She did take some great defensive intercept marks, but I still think she was kind of
hmm
utilized more as a rebound attack, more of a winger attacking player, or not attacking player, but just wasn't the prototypical defender. Matilda, of course, goes without saying, and she'll come up later when we're two Player of the Year voting announce the Player of the Year votes, of course. So there's some great stuff in the middle this year. I'm intrigued as to what you think about the midfield unit, because I think it's still something we talked about right towards the end of the year, is just getting that real number one ball winner, elite class player like your Marinoffs and Garners and Riddells or whoever that are at the top of the league.
Hmm.
That's still yet to emerge for me who that might be. Shanae Goody's probably like one that you think if she can actually start really getting a lot of ball, but then is she a true winner? Like, but at Woodland started having some of those performances towards the end of the year. It's still the one question. I think they had a great finish to the year and got stronger as the year wore on. But my one question of the year is that there's still not just the clear number one beyond Matilda Scholes, really, and she's just a unicorn. So,
Yeah, yeah. Lovable unicorn roaming the ground.
mhm.
Um, in terms of leadership, or yeah, players taking that next step in terms of disposals per game. If Ash Woodland is going to be the midfielder that she appeared to be this year, then it only makes sense that the 27 odd year old is the one that has to be leading the pack, although there is that talent around them. And, Matilda Schultz, Abby Darrick are more than capable of also, going along for that ride and going the wake. But it makes sense to me now that if you have such a talented and experienced footballer, that they're the one to kind of lead the charge in that regard. And like you said, and like we discussed as the season wore on, particularly at the end, she was starting to get into that 22, 23, 24, 25 disposal range, which we want to see more midfielders doing more often.
Mm,
Um, and that comes with potentially, yeah, just regressing from the kick at all costs mentality that we tend to have at stages, and that can make us somewhat predictable, particularly against better opposition, and share the ball around and just look for different avenues out of contest, such as handball, such as that cleaner possession, to bring more people into the game. And to say it like that does sound a bit stat paddy, but it also is to release pressure from a contest. There were stages at the game while we were, DNA, we're getting scrappy and we're in a contest and there's players around the ball. And we make a pretty predictable move, or we just put it straight on the boot, but there's players all around. And again, that smother statistic from the St Kilda game comes ringing back again, when
mm,
you're just kicking it straight into the back of players. So that would be a dimension that I would want all of them really to develop. But particularly Woodland, if she's going to carry the flag in regards to the next evolution of how our midfielders perform, it's definitely something for her to work on. And then look, she had to learn a new role, and I think she did fantastically well at
mhm.
that, particularly as the season wore on. So there's no reason why she can't just pick up where she left off next year and bring Abby Jarrick. Yeah, Matilda Schultz will be the unicorn that keeps unicorning, if you
Yeah.
will. Don't want to put too much pressure. Although Goody and such talented players don't necessarily want. I mean, she spent her first year playing inside, and she had some up and down moments, so it shouldn't necessarily be her that we're looking at. We would obviously love her to get more disposals per game, but in terms of the Marinoff, Charlie Rowbottom, Jazz Garner numbers, Ash Riddell's just that's ridiculous. There's no point trying to aspire to that yet. Um, but yeah, if we're looking at that, yeah, 25 to 27 disposal mark per game, um, then yeah, there's room for Woodland and Co and to grow Dowrick, like I've mentioned now a few times.
Mhm.
Ella Bogue and I am talking about Bogue, not
Yeah,
heads.
yeah, me, yeah.
Ella Bogue is a player that I thought had a down year as a whole. Um, And I put it out there last season to say that I was buying stock in Ella Bogue, but I did also mention that she would be a slow burn improver. And I feel this year that being on a wing is hard. It's hard in the men's game. It's hard in Australian rules football because sometimes you're stuck being a defensive winger and you're just occupying space and you've just got to run up and down the field and it's hard to impact. But there was quite a number of times for a large portion of the season, and maybe it's just my perception. I felt that she was going half-hearted either at contests or there was, say, marking opportunities where the ball was kicked long, and and she had an opportunity to really go hard and put her body on the line a little bit and take that mark. And by put body on the line, I'm not necessarily meaning running into a pack. I'm just meaning like running at full tilt, maybe diving for the ball, maybe getting, taking those ones low to the ground just to really take that mark, relieve some pressure, continue the disposal chain. There
Mm.
was just some moments that I think maybe in reflection that she would like to have over again. But in saying that, much like the team, as the season wore on and we built momentum and we started performing better, funnily enough, Ella Bogue was starting to feature more, and then she got on the end of a few goals.
Yeah.
Particularly that one, was it in the showdown that we were commenting on? It was a really pure footballer's goal.
Yeah.
That she was on
Where
the
we
back end
turned
of.
it over in midfield, with
Yep.
in that incredible run of pressure that we had, and yeah, Matilda Scholes does that really great handball just into Ellerbogue on the run, and she finishes it off like kind of. There's been a lot of talk about Ollie Dempsey's and whatever, and how they're goal scoring wingers, and she
Yes.
scored it essentially in that exact same, like, just you know recognizing the way the play was developing and making the run off the wing to just be in running into open space, and at a gallop, and just do the simple finish. Not the simple finish,
Hmm.
but like she made it look simple, which is what you
Yeah.
want from your wingers
Yeah,
running in like
exactly.
that. Yeah. Um, yeah, it's a great point you bring up about Ella. Like, I think in particular at times, just the way we play, the lack of disposal we have, and the fact that we kind of do just try to go direct. It kind of like we didn't play in a way that brings great success to wingers. Like the great sides this year, your Kangaroos, or the sides that are getting more of the ball, are spreading the field better than we were, in particular in the first half of the year. And again, that showdown goal is a great example of us actually utilizing the space, although of a thinner ground,
Hmm.
ironically. But just um, we've as we developed and started to, maybe we didn't never spread the field incredibly well at any point, I don't think, but we started to kind of utilize the space a little bit more as we started to feel a little bit more control within the game. And yeah, to your point, like surprise, surprise, it brought Ella Bogan to the game more. So yeah, I think there's a few players this year that you kind of looked at the way they attacked the ball and wondered what was going through their minds at times. And I think it was just that came from a little bit of sometimes just a little bit of just unassuredness about how we were playing in those first few weeks as well. There was a little bit of,
Mm.
like
Yeah,
you said,
a
the
lot of
flat
apprehension.
footedness and timidness that we were playing with in as we developed throughout the year. But then you look at the last few weeks and they were kind of flying and floating on air. So it's incredible what a bit of momentum and belief can do. Trying to think of
Yeah,
any other
100%.
midfielders. Yeah, I just look the main focus, like my main criticism for this year is just the handball game around the contest. Like, I don't think you kind of alluded to that. Just the getting the ball out of the contest is just was a down point on the year. But we again that improved towards the back end and kind of you started seeing glimpses. But yeah, it's kind of like probably the
I
main.
think we started taking it away from clubs a little bit
Yeah.
as we assured our contest
Hmm.
and we built momentum near the end. It was something where yeah, either previewing or reviewing, we're just like, well, yeah, we're losing disposal by 50 to 60, and that's all coming from handballs. And then those games where we brought those disposal numbers much closer together, it was because we were bringing those handball numbers of our opposition down. We weren't obviously going to shoot the lights out in that regard, but
Yeah.
um, yeah, we tended to, through way of pressure, obviously, we were finding ways to reduce the opposition's avenues to get it out
Mm.
and spread us a little bit. And um, something that Loz Arnell focused on in her press conference was the need to improve on team defense. She brought it up a few times,
Mm.
which seems like that's going to be a major focus, which I guess the midfield does have a lot of a hand in, obviously, and it's a thought that I had coming out of the defensive third. We're talking about handball, but also taking away opposition handball as well, which will be interesting because she also mentioned that she was questioned upon it, and then she discussed the fact that like we don't want to take away our offensive game. Um, the whole point of this first 4 years is to really solidify the fact that we want to play offensive football, and now it's adding defensive layers to it. Most
Mm.
notably team defense, which the midfield has a large hand in. Whereas she mentioned that other sides in the competition have focused on defense first, and now they're trying to attack. So hoping that that's again another edge that we already have. We have the firepower. Um, we have no issues scoring when we get it forward and like into the guts of the 50. Um, and if we can refine our defense, that the midfield can switch on to another level there, then that's only going to hold us in good stead. And then when we get the ball back to go back on the handball, yeah, zigging and zagging our way through opposition is going to be fun to watch
Mm.
and look good on the telly.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, as we transition, just looking at the forward line quickly, just a note as you're talking about team defense and the philosophy of attack, like learning the attack first and then going back to defense. It's really interesting because we scored 631 points this year, which is the fourth most in the league. Of course, the Kangaroos far and away ahead with 868, but you've got Melbourne at 684, Brisbane on 652, we're on 631. There's the next team is like 80 points below us in Carlton, so um, we're the only team and we're in the bottom 10, obviously. But to take a little bit of that away, we gave up 601 points, which is the third most in the competition. So we score the fourth most and give up the third most. So
Mm,
it kind of shows that push
yeah.
and pull that we need to find the balance of, because we clearly can score, but we gave us some points. Of course, the fucking almost as almost a sixth of that is against the fucking Kangaroos. So like, there's that. But we did have some decent games defensively, but we did still give up the third most in the comp. Obviously, GWS and Gold Coast being the ones that's only ones that gave up more points than us. We did again. These stats, I say them, but you've also got to add the nuance of it being that we did have the second hardest fixture in the comp this year. So we were going to give up points, but we did score. We did still score well. We gave up points. There's a bit you can take that however way you want to take it, but positively we did score a lot, and it was because we had a fucking great forward line in the end. Which is funny. I think back at the start of the season when we previewed it, I said the
Yeah.
one area that I'm a little bit concerned about, and this was obviously after we found out that Tika was going to be out for a good amount of time. Of course, we knew early on that Caitlin Wendland was out early on in preseason. So going into the start of the year, and this was before Indy Tahoe went up forward, it was kind of like it's Gemma and, don't know exactly what else. Juzzy, of course. But by the end of the year, we have, of course, Jasmine Stewart's no longer part of the team, but she had a really great few weeks on the back end. But I think the one in particular that really impressed me, of course, we'll talk about Gemma and Indy and kind of the forward line. And Juzzy got better as the season wore on as well, and a really great captaincy year for her. We'll give her her flowers in a moment as well. But I think the one that kind of popped up and well rewarded with a contract extension was Caitlin Pope popping up with a goal every couple of weeks,
Yeah.
or if not more. And just incredible assists, like just her like fucking like 4 foot frame turning around and just hammering one with that left boot. Like I'm being, it's a little bit facetious, but she just seems like such a pocket rocket out there. But she has
Yeah.
such a weapon of a leg, and she'd either utilize it to snap one through herself, or she just put one back into the hot zone, like back into the kitchen there. If she got it on the 50, she'd just find a way to wheel around and get it in there. So that helped a lot. And I mean, I can stop talking for a second and let you talk about that as well. But yeah, the forward line went from being such a point of concern to just the one of the hottest forward lines in the competition this year. Obviously, accolade laden with the achievements of Gemma and Indy, but I think Caitlin Pope was a really big part of kind of filling the gap of the small forwards mix as well.
Yeah, and we certainly needed it, didn't we? I like that she's a focus right now because she was one of our better. It's funny it is to say she was one of our better impact per disposal players. She didn't get a lot of the ball, as I think we commented on in one of the later games of the season.
Mm-hmm.
But she had an ability to make her disposals count. So whether that manifests into more disposals as again we progress in years, because that will be great if that trend continues, impact per disposal. But yeah, she
Mm-hmm.
did help to fill the void of Wendland going out through way of goals and assists. Obviously not to the same degree, but I think we got more out of her than we probably could have hoped for leading into the season. Leading into the season, we she was probably an afterthought for a lot of people, if in anyone's thoughts at all. But the team obviously loves her as well, and so being connected, um, having that presence of mind, like you alluded to, either putting one through the sticks or just absorbing a little bit of pressure to then release to a player in a better position to score. Yeah, a great credit to her. I really enjoyed her season for those aspects. It's just, yeah, she didn't get a lot of it, but you knew when the ball was in her vicinity, she'd generally make a good decision if she was up the field, or she'd more than likely impact on the scoreboard if she was inside 50. So I think a great year for her. If you can call, yeah, a low possession on average per game year, if you can call that a great year, I think it was. Um, and
I think
then,
you I think when you
I know
frank it
we're
with
reviewing,
the 6-7, I'm actually just I should have looked it up before, but I'm going to look up what
say
her.
6'7".
Oh God damn it! I didn't mean to, but like, I just think that's. Oh no, oh no. It's funny. I was having that discussion at work because my parents were like wondering what like that means, and I think I was like, I think it was like I think I kind of went with the like blade blades of glory. Like nobody knows what it means, but it's provocative, and they're like, no, it must mean something. And like you Google it, it's like actually, it doesn't really have any defined meaning. It's just fucking kids being kids. Um, Anyway, yeah, Caitlin Pope, like I think just the fact that she popped up with 6 or 8 goals this year, I'm just going to say that. Um, because I think Wenland had about 10 last year. We
Six
just,
to eight.
yeah. um, but fuck them kids. Like it just, it filled the void between and Pope and Juzzy, I think as well. Both of them kind of made a good tandem of Juzzy was doing similar stuff, either scoring the goals or just getting in and under and making sure it got out for goal scorers to score. And like when you had them as a bit of a tandem down there, and of course once we threw Indy down there as well, I think it just like the forward line just suddenly became like went from this. I think I used the term vanilla at the start of the year. I just wasn't sure where the
Yeah.
dynamism was going to come from. Not that Gemma, like obviously Gemma was the focal point at that point, with Teakle out and not being aware of the indie move coming and all that. But Gemma's obviously a dynamic player, but she needs dynamism to go with her, as we saw. Like the proof is in the pudding that when you throw a good player with her, it's like something like maybe you're thinking, oh, the opportunities will be taken away. It's like no, there'll just be more opportunities to eat, and Indy and Gemma are both going to break the goal scoring record. Like, and
Mm.
when once Popey got going, Juzzy got into the year, and her leadership down there at all times was fantastic. And it just made this forward line suddenly become one of the most dangerous in the league, which is just not what I was expecting at the start of the year. I was hoping if we had a fitness aside that it was going to be decent, but just to become the juggernaut it was as the, by the end of the year, um, teams would have been. There's a few teams in that bottom half of the 8 that would have been sweating on Port Adelaide finding a backdoor way into the finals, I think, because they just wouldn't have wanted to deal with
Yeah,
what we had up forward.
not at all. Not at all. We have commented on the fact that AFLW defenses aren't that well equipped yet.
Mm.
Obviously, the better teams in the comp have a better spread, but yeah, having a forward line that potent, yeah, I totally agree with that. The teams in the bottom half of the 8 sweating on us, yeah, missing. Hoping for that to happen, which it did. Because we would have done some damage. And in regards to Juzzy, like it's no surprise to me that when she played a good game, the team played a good game, and vice versa.
Mm.
It was a point of lament in some of our losses, but a sign, a tick of approval in some of our wins, and particularly some of our better wins. In those better wins, she had a tangible impact on the contest from a forward line, and she was coming up the field a bit more in some of those games, and particularly more at the back end of the year. Um, but your leaders need to lead, but sometimes you need to help them lead, particularly when they're a forward, is a point that I brought up throughout the whole season. And yeah, shoot, it would seem to me, outside looking in, that inside the four walls on the track, things like that, she'd be second to none. She'd be an absolutely fantastic leader. But when it comes to game day, it's positional play in football, and yeah, early doors she struggled to find her way into the contest, and therefore couldn't really lead by example, and had not much impact at all. And then thankfully, as the season it was we built into the season, she found her way into the games, and therefore our team lifted as a result of that.
Mm.
Um, yeah, how much more can you ask for than to get 48 goals out of Gemma and Indy? Um,
Yeah.
it's just a phenomenal effort, and again, a point of lament for the fact that yeah, they both can't apply their trade in finals. But with the addition of Julia Teakle in the last round and the fact that they all kind of cashed in, albeit against a lesser opponent. But like we discussed, you just want the signs to suggest that one of those cogs isn't going to work to the detriment of someone else,
Mm.
and it didn't. And so with that forward line now appearing to be a mixture of Houghton Tahoe, Teakle, Pope, Mules-Robinson, and then with the re-addition of Caitlin Wendland and whoever else is resting down there at certain stages throughout next season, we
Well,
go
let's just
back to the
throw into
to
the mix that Lauren Young gave us a little bit this year as well,
Lauren Young. Yeah,
which was
yeah,
she
easily
had a
forgotten with her troubles, but definitely another
very
one to
nice
keep
little
an eye on for
cameo
next
this
year.
year.
And
Like she had a
yeah,
cameo.
absolutely.
She
Yeah.
had the angels ringing
A
around
great goal
Alberta.
song.
An incredible moment. Yeah, there's a lot of depth down there.
Just as a sidebar, I don't know if everyone's been following, or obviously not everyone would be fans of Metallica, but I went to the Metallica concert in Adelaide, and one of their a part of their show on this tour is midway through the set they play James Hetfield and Lars Ulrich go off for a rest because they proclaim that they're too, they need a break because they're old and whatnot, and Kirk
Well,
Hammett, Robert
that shit.
Trujillo stay on. They kind of jam. Yeah, yeah, yeah. But then they make a point of saying that at every city that they play in, they like to play a song that is local to that area. And while they started with a bit of an instrumental of In Excess's, oh, what's the song? Dun, 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 dun.
Need you,
The
need
name
you, need you
escapes
to
me,
know.
but Need You Tonight. That's right. Which is an Australian song,
Not
but then
sleeping.
they moved into actually playing Am I Ever Gonna See Your Face Again? Which, as you can imagine, went off, and you could
Yeah,
see the smiles on their faces when they asked the question, "Am I ever going to see your face again?" And the crowd responded in kind, as you would imagine,
yeah,
which was quite a fun time of the night. But yeah, the Lauren Young goal song just sparked that memory in my mind. Obviously, that was last week or and whatnot. So
yeah. Fresh in
yeah,
the memory banks.
a
Yeah,
good memory. But yeah, cool to see Metallica play and well, two members of Metallica playing an Angel song, and then yeah, getting to experience the "No Way, Get Fucked, Fuck Off" scream
yeah.
back at them.
Which was fantastic to hear that ring around Alberton after that Lauren Young
Yeah,
kicked
yeah.
that goal and see Lauren Young's smile on her face as they kind of showed her on camera there and like she's just smiling as she's listening. I'm sure that's going to be a great moment for her to remember. Um, and like she didn't play too much this year, so we won't focus on it too much. But she did give us a nice little cameo as to what like the forward pressure and the tackling and some of it. Like she kicked that goal that night, but she'd had two other three siders on goal that she just missed, so she could have easily had a three-goal haul herself against the Dogs that night. Just wanted to touch back on the kind of the so Caitlin Pope didn't kick six or seven or eight goals. She kicked five this year. She kicked 5 goals, seven, very close to a 6-7 scoreline. I'm just leaning into it now. Um, Juzzy kicked 5 goals too. So between them, they had the 10, which kind of like they kind of make up the Wendland kind of moneyball it in there, like we're going to replace
Giambi.
replace Giambi with two players. It's going to be Caitlin Pope and Justine Mules-Robinson. But between them, they had Popey had 31 score involvements, Juzzy had 34. So like between them, they get 65 score involvements. They kicked 10 goals. Like there's like just they did their job. They played their role so perfectly down there as the foil.
Hmm.
Kicking a goal when they needed to, but by and large, they were just involved in the scoring. The other 5 goal scorer this year we shouldn't touch on as well, just, while it's midfield. Matilda Scholl's popping up with 5. I'd like her to kick a few more. Like, she did miss a few opportunities as well. She was 5 goals, 8. She, of course, had the 72 score involvements. Again, unicorn. But again, like, I
And
want
that
to see
was
it.
top, sorry to cut in. I think that was top 10 in the league, if
Yeah,
not top maybe 5 or 6 in the league for score involvements from Matilda as well. So credit to
top
her.
4.
Again, the
Only
unicorn.
Kate Hoare, Jasmine
There
Garner,
you
and Ash Riddell ahead of her. So, fucking decent company.
Good
um,
company. Yeah, absolutely.
so, yeah, Matilda popping up with 5 as well just really helps the attacking. The fact that she can just float down there and she kicks goals just from her midfield position, but the fact she can pop down there and take some marks and do that kind of stuff as well. But yeah, just an incredibly dynamic forward line that I just wasn't expecting this year. Like the individual accolades that came with that, Indy breaking the goal scoring record and finishing as the leading goal scorer, obviously great stuff. Gemma going right with her, being very close in the end, and just the goals around them from the others. Again, it just really, really whets the appetite going into next year as to what this unit can become, because you've got Gemma as the veteran, but Julia Teakle, who we only saw a little bit of this year, very young. Indy, very young. Juzzy still got a bit left in the tank for sure. And then you've got the likes of Lauren Young and co coming in there that are very young as well. So there's a lot of Jazzy Soudan with her forward pressure and the tackling. If she adds a little bit more,
Yes.
few more strings to her bow. As far as the goals go, she kicked a couple this year, so she's not like she didn't kick any, but she could be that next one up. Like, she's going to be following in the footsteps of your Popies and stuff like that. So,
Succession plan, if you will.
yes, yeah. This is meant to be a positive episode.
Yeah.
No. No, an incredible year from
Hey,
the
well, look, no one's really commenting on succession plan now with all the port news coming out. I'll just say that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah. It's definitely very, very distant in the rearview mirror, isn't it? Um, yeah. It's a great. That's why I wanted to finish on the forward line. I mean, you have anything else more on it? I mean, we're going to talk about a few of the individuals here as we get to the Player of the Year to finish it off. But yeah, it's a really, really surprisingly pleasing, wonderful part of the year that this forward line was just so incredibly fun to watch.
Yeah, agree. Not much more to add. Would just be waffling on. So, but I'm pretty keen to see how these votes panned out.
Yes, yes. Well, we might as well play that sting one more time this year and fucking get to it.
Yes!
Now it's time for the CreedCast Player of the Year voting. Jamie's excitement there as the sting started playing was palpable. I don't. Do we just start going into the votes? I mean, I'll just ask you before I do the votes. Give me who do you think the top 3 is? Just off the top off the top of the dome.
Heads Dowrick Schultz.
Okay. Okay. You got 2 or 3 there. But I'll read through them now. Not bad. So what we have is in 10th, we have on 11 votes, Molly Brooksby. We talked about her before. I think that's an incredible result for her that she does just kind of pop up in the votes. Unfortunately, a lot of these ones down the lower end do pop up in the lower end of the votes each week, because there's a few of those ones that do regularly collect the top half of the votes each week. But Brooksby kind of shows her consistency by getting in there in the 10th spot. An equal 8th. A surprising one when I went through the votes, but it shows that kind of the impact in a few short roles. But Piper Window got herself 12 votes. I think she had a couple of good games in there that basically she collected some votes, and kind of shows that we do have a lot of love for what she can provide this team when she's in there. And she might have been well more up there if she'd been able to play a full season. So and alongside her in 8th on 12 votes as well was Saatchi Syme. Yeah, Sarch. Yeah,
Sarch.
12 votes. So love that work for her. In 7th, it might feel a little bit kind of disappointing for her in the sense that, but I think it's just she does go about her business so kind of regularly and consistently. But in 7th was 15 votes, Gemma Houghton. She was often, in the forward line, she was second fiddle to Indy Tahoe, who was, taking votes as well. So it was a bit hard. And then, of course, you've got the other ones.
I know, yeah. Some
So
things have just dawned on me, Dave. So sorry.
I'm wondering if
Continue.
you'll feel that way later on, though. But yeah, Gemma Houghton. We'll talk about him a little bit more individually once I get through the votes. And but in sixth, with 22 votes, it is Ella Heads. So there's Jamie's top. And I think that was a great cool way you to think about her in that way, because we did have her up there a lot. We talked about her a lot this year, and she did regularly feature in the votes. It was just often, again, she was
Hmm.
behind a few others. We have two in equal fourth, and one of them being Shanae Goody, the other one being Indy Tahoe. 29 votes each for Shanae Goody and Indy Tahoe, which is a great return for Indy, being a key position player. Often the votes are dominated by players that are a little bit more on ball, but Indy's year obviously was, and just some of the incredible performances was rewarded by a decent number of votes. So, and of course, Shanae Goody just was regularly popping up there, and she had a great year. She had some games where we wanted to see her get more of the ball. When she did get more of the ball, she caught her eye and got the votes. So, Indy and Goody,
Yeah.
29 votes each in equal fourth, which brings us to third spot on the table. And in third, with 60 votes, we've loved her work this year. She's changed her role, and she's just flourished, really. It is Ash Woodland in third with 60 of our votes this year. An incredible year for Ash. We'll talk about her a bit more in a second. But I want to announce the Player of the Year and get through that before we talk about it a bit more at length. In second, with 72 votes, it was our winner from last year, Abby Dowrick, which means that on 78 votes in first place, Matilda Scholes has won our Player of the Year vote, which I thought that I was not going to. I thought that I'd fucked it up by me being the whole LeBron James thing I was talking about a few weeks ago, with not rewarding her
Yeah,
enough
yeah.
myself. But by the end of the votes, it was Matilda Scholes. She is the CreedCast AFLW Port Adelaide Player of the Year this year. An incredible year by Matilda. But a close vote there, 72, 78 for her, 72 for Dowrick. It's relatively close for the way that our votes work. And Woodland wasn't too far behind in third either. I think that's a fair reflection on their individual kind of attribute, the way they attributed to our side this year. I think that's a fair reflection on how important those three were. Matilda clearly is our best player. I think it must be said. So I think that's a fair reflection.
Yeah.
I'm pretty happy with how they shook
Hmm.
out. How are you feeling about that?
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's a great top five. Yeah, obviously, yeah. Question without notice. Off the top, I'm obviously neglected a couple of people in my thought patterns, but yeah, as the votes wore on it, yeah, a couple of things dawned on me, and I remember back to my voting. But it's just funny because yeah, Abby Dowrick, I mean, she missed that game against Brisbane, which we didn't speak about in that rundown of
Mm,
that game, which
it's
affected the
true. It's
result as
true.
well.
Hmm.
She found herself low on some votes on certain occasions, but it just goes to show that by and large, old copy and paste just got the job done more often than not,
Mm.
and was one of our better players clearly. And yeah, there's no one would be arguing that point. Yeah, I've said it throughout, if not the whole year, most of the year, that if Matilda doesn't win our best and fairest, there's something seriously wrong happened with the count. Kind of Elon Musk type areas, I reckon. And yeah, because what she's going
Start
to do
waving
to
a
the
chainsaw
competition over.
around on the stage, are you?
Yeah. What Matilda's going to do to the competition in the next few years is quite frightening, to be honest. You
Hmm.
mentioned, her room to grow in way of forward craft. There's even, the more nuanced and finesse aspects sometimes in some of the other parts of the field. Marking was just a kind of second nature attribute to a game this year when it wasn't last year. So that's probably a window into how she can improve and how she does improve year
Do
on
you want to
year.
see a fucking insane number about the marking?
Do you want to build a snowman?
I mean,
Yeah,
yes.
tell me the insane
Also
number.
that. Like, yeah. We'll do the marks and then we'll do a snowman. So in 2023, she took 24 marks. In 2024, she took 16. This year, she took 52.
Hmm. Yeah,
52
yeah.
marks this year. So she's
So
taken more marks this year than she took in her first 2 years of AFL competition. Um,
yeah,
that's, yeah. So to your point, it's just, and we talked about it, I think, halfway through the season and as the season wore on, and you were really keyed in on it. You were just like, we're not even talking about this anymore. We're just like, she's just marking balls
She's just
and
doing
looking
it. Yeah.
and really involved in the link up play stuff, which was really, really important for the growth of the side.
Exactly. Yeah, now she's a very, very handy get out option coming out of defense or a calculated decision as well,
Hmm.
through kick-ins and scoring up, not scoring chain, disposal chains from the defensive 50. We may see opposition clubs having to develop defensive plans around Matilda Schultz in years to come, in the short term, because there'll be players coming up through the pathways that will challenge her. She'll be challenged, and it'll be good for her to be challenged as the years go on. But fucking hell, aren't we happy that the unicorn's in our stable? Because she's just an amazing person, an amazing player. Funnily enough, her partner and girlfriend in Abby Darrick was second in our votes, and it just goes to show, yeah, maybe a symbiotic relationship of sorts.
Hmm.
And yeah, just working in tandem. As long as that relationship remains healthy, their on-field relationship will only continue to grow as well. And again, hopefully we see a golden era with those two kind of leading the charge as well. Ash Woodland, credit to her for finishing third as well. I don't know if you have last year's votes handy at all or remember them off the top of your head, but I'm not sure where she really wound up in our kind of voting. If I'm just to kind of throw it out there, I don't think she would have featured quite highly, if at
No,
all, in our top 10.
I don't think she
Um,
did. I'm trying to scroll back frantically through my notes app, but it's not super well,
yeah, yeah. I mean, it's
not super well
it's a
organized,
little
which is a
important.
me thing.
Yeah, we
Uh,
can go off vibes because I think our vibe is right in saying that I don't think she featured that highly. She did chip in
yeah,
with
I'll,
goals. There was portions of the year where she was kind of stuck in no man's land because of how the team was playing, and she had her spurts in the midfield. But yeah, this year she's clearly taken it to another level, and um, she's found the fruits of her labor as a result, and our votes kind of reflect that too.
yeah, yeah. I was just trying to. I was like, I thought I had it, but I haven't found it. Ah, well. But yeah, to your point, I think yeah, Woodland's gone from being like not in our votes at all. I think like, maybe getting a vote or two, but certainly not in our top 10 last year to being top three. And I mean, her year, I mean, obviously she's just eclipsed career averages across the board. Like her career average disposals is 9.6 this year. She has 18 disposals per game, marks per game, 2.2. Tackles up like her. I mean, just her fantasy number. She averaged 79.2 this year. Her career average is 49.7. Obviously, these are obvious things because she was a key forward, like key position player. So you just knocked her
Yeah.
much of the ball, particularly in AFLW as well. But the fact that she could become a midfielder and a damaging midfielder, I think we've talked about like the one deficiency being a disposal efficient deficiency being a disposal efficiency. Say that fast three times. I'm not going to do it. But like she did so much. Her contested possession game this year was often she was always at the top of our contested possessions. So a lot of her ball winning was hard ball winning and then hard ball exiting. So it was like, and sometimes I think we had the discussion at times that sometimes like her dump kicking was a little bit like too much at times, but
Yeah.
also was like sometimes when she dump kicks it forward, it sometimes was just to gain grass and like it might have been an ineffective disposal, so to speak. But I think it sometimes came to stoppage and actually helped us get some forward. Like so, sometimes it worked, and she was doing the hard work and got some clearances. Some really when she got space to actually work with the ball, she was able to actually use the ball quite color. There was a couple of goal assists like where she put the ball in for a really nice mark, just straight into the bread
Hmm.
basket for whether it be Tahoe or Gemma or someone else. So she had some classy moments of disposal when she was able to actually get free acreage from the center clearance or something like that, and then she was doing a lot of hard ball winning in between. So I'm just massively impressed with her year, and I'm really, really glad she finished in our top three. I think it's very, very deserving. Matilda and Abby were top two last year for us, and not to
Yeah.
just be like, oh yeah, they're there every year, but I think just for Ash, I think it's really good to key in on her because I think it's just such an incredible year for her. Because the other two were doing what they've been building on for a couple of years. Ash has been when this plan came into started being hatched for Ash to do what she did this year. I don't know. I'd love to ask Nell and Co
Mm.
about that and kind of work through the timeline and how this kind of came to be. But for us, we just saw it happen as it happened, and it's been an incredibly refreshing thing. And it's kind of thrown another little piece. Like this time last year, we're never thinking of Ash as a midfielder. Now we're going into next year being like Ash Woodland, the midfielder, alongside and adds that extra
Hmm.
dynamism that we're talking about that we might need.
Yeah, totally agree. Totally agree. And she can flex her muscle even more.
Hmm.
Now that she's built that base, it leaves her a good platform to propel from next year. You know, my hopes are that we see her really knocking some people off their perch and really taking advantage of that, franking that contested work, but while adding the finesse and the cleanlier disposal. Um,
Hmm.
yeah, but the last 4 to 5 weeks in a nutshell, kind of paint the picture for what she could potentially do moving forward, which is great.
Yeah, yeah. Um, and the likes of Indy and Goody being right up there and heads, I think, kind of speaks to the we've talked about them a lot this year. Obviously, Indy being a forward, you could sit there and say, oh, she kicked 25 goals, she should be up there. But, it's hard to contend with the years that Matilda, Dowrick, and Woodland had as far as being the facility. You're not kicking. We had this talk a few weeks ago. Indy had a great year and kicked 25 goals, but you're not kicking 25 goals without Matilda doing what she did, Dowrick doing what she did, and Woodland doing. So it's like chicken and the egg stuff, and ultimately our votes
Yeah.
fell for them, and but Indy and Co, gathered a decent amount of votes for the positions they play as well, I think, and I think the list actually shook out as a fair reflection of how the year kind of. Votes are always going to go to those players that catch the eye the most. So that's just how it works. Whether it be, we've seen the Brownlow get more and more. Um, the Brownlow medal is really just a reflection of modern late stage capitalism. Like it's just the rich are getting richer and the poor are getting poorer in the Brownlow medal with the mid becoming more and more midfielder based. It's
Mm.
late night hours here. I'm going to start talking about late stage capitalism and the Brownlow medal. But with our, with our award, I think it's a decent reflection. And Matilda winning is absolutely deserved. And like I said, she's really the best player on our team. That mantle is hers for the next 10 years, really, with just how good she is. And it's no, if anyone, we just need players to go with her and she's going to be golden. So, an incredible year for our girls. I'm really, really proud of them and how they finished it. It's, again, you kind of started the podcast talking about the conflicted nature of our emotions with how the season went. But I think the ultimate thing is, while it was a tough year and we're not completely happy with some of the results early on, I'm just so proud of the way they responded to that adversity in the middle of the year. It could have been. It's really go like get tough get going kind of times is how the middle of the year tested this group, and
Hmm.
the tough got going and they finished the year with some famous wins, some wins that really set themselves up with the confidence to go into 2026, and ultimately gave us something to be really excited about. And I think the individual accolades really give us something to cling on to, something tangible from this year to celebrate still. Like, while we didn't get the finals or anything like that, we've got
Yep.
tangible things. There are achievements that are going to be forever in the AFLW record books that are from this year that I think are very, very deserved. And then as far as the team aspect of it goes, we learned some things about ourselves and go have some great confidence going into 2026. So ultimately, I think in a weird way, it was this, and I know a lot of some people that look at a little bit more binary, just go, "Oh no, it was a step back." I think that I think you alluded to it at the top end of the episode. I think this year was a step forward, as maybe a small step forward, but an important step forward, and um,
Hmm.
maybe not a. It's not a successful year objectively, but I think subjectively, in the growth of this team, it was a year of growth.
Yeah, I can't argue because you're obviously reflecting some of the points that I made already. So
Mhm.
yeah, yeah, I could go on. I could go around in circles for sure. I have a tendency to do that sometimes. But no, I obviously agree. Yeah, in a binary way and in an objective way, it's not a quote unquote success. But you do feel that in years to come, we may look back on this year and say that that was a year that we took a step forward in a regard or some regards. Um, we just don't know it yet. But like you said, we do have things to celebrate out of this year, and they should definitely not be forgotten. And when it comes to our best and fairest night, I doubt that they will be forgotten. I dare say they'll be celebrated like they should. And that's
Mhm.
something to be proud of, I think.
Absolutely. And I think we've still got AFLW awards to come, All Australian team to be announced. Of course, we know that Ella Heads and Matilda Scholes made the 22 under 22 team, so congratulations to them. But it should be Matilda Scholes should be adding another accolade to her, ever burgeoning
Hmm.
list of awards that she's already got at such a young age, and getting her first All Australian
Yeah.
spot. And of course, we hope that Indy Tahoe and Gemma Houghton are deservedly joining her in that All Australian side, which I'm sure we'll cover at some point in the future when that all gets announced. But do watch the AFLW awards night, by the way, because if Matilda gets a chance, because Matilda had some great moments during that last year,
Last year,
in
yeah.
her just lovable, just I'm Matilda Scholes and I'll do what I want kind of way. Now she doesn't seem prepared for it, but also is prepared. But it's a great night. So a last chance to kind of enjoy the accolades of those individuals will be whenever the AFLW awards are on TV. So of course, Indy getting her awards, and Gemma, I'm sure, will be honoured in some way as well. So, and hopefully the All Australian announcements. But for now, I think that's a neat little bow on the AFLW season that has been for our Port Adelaide side this year.
Yep, it's all wrapped up in a neat little package.
Hmm.
So we'll leave it at that and thank everyone for their support once again, and thanks for listening.
Yes, yeah, no, absolutely. We appreciate you being along for this journey. It is recording. We're recording this on Thursday, the 13th of November. It's ticked past 11 p.m. on this evening, and being that this is kind of the last review show of the season, so to speak. It's been we've been reviewing games since March, and reviewing games or seasons or
Hmm.
periods of seasons since March, and we've gotten through to the middle of November. So it's been a long year, but a fun year, of course, doing this, despite the fact that we haven't seen the success on the field, so to speak. But there's been some incredible moments, whether it be Boak Bowl or certainly some of these late season AFLW results. So it's been a really fun year doing this. We've got we'll have a few more episodes to go before we take a bit of a break over the Christmas period anyway. With, like I said, keep an eye out next week when we kind of wrap up some of the news that has been going on with the AFL men's side of things, as they keep dropping just fixtures. And again, we
Hmm.
really want to
Yeah,
talk about
they know what they're
Dougie.
doing.
Yeah, but we really want to talk about Dougie Cochran as well. So that'll happen next week, because that just feels like a small victory. And then when draft and all those things happen, we'll talk about them as they happen, both in the AFL men's and the AFL women's side. Probably the AFL women's side might be the bit more of the pertinent, player movement that's coming, because we don't know what's going to happen on the men's side, really. So until next year, anyway. But thank you, everyone, for listening. We really, really appreciate your patronage on the podcast. It's not lost on us how cool it is to just be a couple of nuffies that talk about Port Adelaide week to week on the podcast, and have people actually tune in and enjoy what we say and actually find some value in it. So shout out to all of you that do listen regularly, those that talk to us regularly. We really, 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 really appreciate it. So nothing more to say. Calm the pair. It's only fitting that Jamie gets a calm the pair at the end of this review. Good night, everyone. Thank you.
See you guys.